Hi everybody, it's Thomas here from Thomas Fitzgerald Photography, and in this video I'm going to do a quick tutorial on using multiple applications to edit an image. So basically I am going to start here in Apple Photos, and this is a JPEG that I shot. It was shot on a Nikon D800, so it's a fairly large image. So what I want to do is just kind of enhance it a bit, kind of tweak the colors and so on, and straighten it and do a few other little bits and pieces. So what I'm going to do is, for this, I'm going to use a number of different things. I'm going to start here in Photos. I'm going to go to Photoshop, and I'm going to use some plugins in Photoshop. Finish everything, and then just send everything back to Photos. Okay, so we'll try and do this as quickly as we can, just to kind of give you an idea that using multiple applications doesn't have to be that arduous. I think some people get put off because they think, well, I can do everything in Lightroom, so why bother? Or I can do everything in one application. But sometimes using different things kind of has its advantages too. So again, I always believe that use whatever workflow works for you and use whatever works for a particular image. So so let's just dive right in and show you what I have in mind for this. So I'm going to start by sending this to Photoshop. So I already have Photoshop open, so what I want to do is edit with and then Photoshop CC 2018. So this should pop this over to Photoshop. Okay, so we're in Photoshop here now. So first thing I'm going to do is I need to straighten this image because, as you can see, it's a little bit crooked. So I had a crop set there already, so I'm just going to clear that, and we'll just drag this back out. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to actually straighten this, and we're just going to kind of go by the verticals in the image as a guide for straightening. So when you've got an image like this and there's a degree of perspective in it, I always find that the easiest way to make sure you've got straight lines is to go by vertical lines near the center of the image, because that way you're not straightening for the perspective, you're actually straightening the verticals. It's the best way, in my opinion, to make sure your image is actually level. Because sometimes with perspective you've got distorted angles and stuff. If you go to try and straighten a line, a horizontal line, you can sometimes be off. So for example, if I was to try and straighten by the boardwalk here, it would actually it would be misaligned. So anyway, that's just a quick tip for you. So I'll just double click on that to fix that. Okay, so that's that straightened. So the next thing I want to do is, I'm just going to zoom in here for a sec just to check a few things and to see if there's any like dust spots or stuff that I need to fix. And there doesn't seem to be anything major here, so we're okay with this. We'll let this go. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to duplicate the layer, so Command J. So in Photoshop I like to keep duplicate layers just so that I can fade things down and also undo stuff. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a plugin, so we're going to go and open up in Luminar. And I'm not going to do much in Luminar, I'm just going to use, one filter on this. Or maybe I'll use a couple, we'll see now. Okay, so I'm going to cheat a bit here, and I'm going to use something that I've already done for a different image, but it was actually from a similar shoot. So as you can see, that's way too much, that's too strong, so I'm just going to fade this back to about 40%. Which isn't too bad. It's not exactly where I want the finished image to be, but it's fine for now because I'm going to do some more tweaks to this in a minute. I don't even bring the highlights down so much on this, that's actually... And so if I just check before and after, again, I'm not doing a huge amount of this. What I might do is bring up some of the water a bit more, so I'm going to add another layer here. And I'm just going to manually add a filter, and I want detail enhancer. If I can find it. Detail enhancer. Small, medium. Let's bring this up a little bit, and then I'm going to add a layer mask to this. So we want a gradient mask, and just do that. So we just use a mask to make sure we're on the right side. Okay, and I click done. Okay, so now if I turn this layer on and off, You can see we're just adding a bit of detail to the water. Okay, so I'm going to apply this. So what this will do now is this will render this back out to Photoshop. So I should have it as a new layer in Photoshop. Okay, so as you can see, we're now back in Photoshop and that has done the processing on that. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to do a few more little tweaks. And so what I need to do first is I'm going to bring up my histogram, which is somewhere hidden. Okay. And I'm just going to put this up here so we can see what's going on. I'll hide that for a minute. And I don't need this. So, and we don't need this. So all I need is my layers for the moment. Okay, so I'm going to add a curves adjustment. Okay, so I just want to tweak the contrast and brightness on this just ever so slightly. Again, I'm not doing a huge amount here. It's all kind of fine tweaking at this point. Okay, so if I toggle that on and off, you can see it's just, I've just brought up the brightness ever so slightly. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I need a clean copy of everything. So I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to go Command Option Shift E. So that will create a new merged layer. Okay, so I want to kind of keep that as a stopgap position for the moment, so I'm going to duplicate this again. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a LUT to this. So I go to Image Adjustments, Color Lookup. Okay, and Load 3D LUT. So I'm using one of my own LUTs from my Film Candy LUT series, and I am looking for Turkish Delight. And the reason I'm using this is because I've used it before, so I know what I'm doing. In the vein of All Good Cooking Show, here's one I made earlier. Okay, so I'm going to click OK on this. And obviously that's way too intense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a few things. So we'll set this maybe to soft light. Okay, which is straight away is much better, and then we just lower the opacity of it. Okay, so before, after. Okay, so one of the things it's doing is it's kind of darkening this area a little too much. So there's a couple of ways we can get around this. We could try changing to a different blend mode, or I could add a mask, or I can just try doing this. So I'm just going to bring this up a bit. So basically we're getting rid of the blacks, and then if I hold down the Alt key, I can split this. So this is now kind of a soft fall off. So basically this controls the blending. So from here down it's going to start becoming transparent, and then the blacks will be completely transparent. So that way we're not darkening the area too much. Okay, so then the next thing I want to do is kind of darken the sky a bit. So I'm going to add another curves. And we're just going to drag this down like this. That's all we want really. And then I'm going to go to the gradient. And on the mask channel, I'm just going to add a gradient. Okay, so all that does is just darken the sky a little bit. And then finally, what I'm going to do is add a vignette over the whole thing. So I'm going to add another curves adjustment. And I am going to, well, we'll make the adjustment first. So again, I'm just going to drag down the gamma. Okay, and then I'm going to use my marquee tool. Drag that like that. Press delete to delete the mask. And then deselect. And then filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Turn this up quite a high amount. Okay, and then we can just lower the opacity of that a bit as well. Okay, so if I go back to my history palette, and if I look That's where we started. And that's where we finished. So it's not a massive amount. I mean, you could absolutely do this in one application, but sometimes you find yourself thinking of things in a different way sometimes, and sometimes it's easy to think of things methodologically. Does that make sense? So again, it's like keeping your options open, and you work in different ways sometimes let you think in different ways. Like I said, that's not a massive amount of change I've done to this image, but we have all these options here, and like I can tweak the values of this still. It's just a different way of working, and I find sometimes you can get different results, or you can find things that you wouldn't think of otherwise. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. It's not a massive revelation or anything. I just wanted to kind of give you a demonstration that, like, use different ways of working. Sometimes you don't have to always just use one application or use the one way of working, and limit yourself to certain things. Especially if you have Creative Cloud, you probably have Photoshop anyway. So there we go. If I want to save this back now, there's the photos editing is a bit funky, so I'll try this. Sometimes this works and sometimes this doesn't. If you save it as a PSD back into the same place, it should relink, but sometimes it doesn't. So we're going to try this and see. Otherwise you have to save over the JPEG, and then you lose all your edits. So you might necessarily sometimes have to save a copy of this elsewhere. Unfortunately, the way Apple implemented this is a bit temperamental. But let's just switch back to photos and see. Oh, it worked. See, it worked fine. Okay, so there we have it. That's using multiple applications and plugins just to do a quick edit on an image. And as I said at the start, it didn't take too long. So it's, again, just a different way of working. Okay, I hope you found this useful. And if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up or like and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. See you next time.